I like Moose. He's got some base takes on Gacha, in my opinion. But yeah, let's see what Moose on Caffeine has got to say here then. Because I am now known, especially in the Wither space, as the Endfield shill, who even likes the Gacha. God, I must be stupid. Arknights Endfield is the most divisive Gacha game so far. Ooh, I don't know if it is, but let's see what he's got to say about this specific thing then, shall we, guys? Preemptive like as always. Let's see what Moose has got to say.
Hey, welcome back. What do you look for when you install a new Gacha game? Are you looking for characters, gameplay, or story?
Number 1, gameplay. Number 2, story. Number 3, characters. But they're all overlap heavily, don't they?
Since the release
really
of Genshin Impact, most Gacha game releases began to provide a great experience with all of these aspects. The quality and standard were raised with this game, and now when you create an inferior product, it fails. In most cases, when a Gacha game releases, it is very cut and clear who likes it and who doesn't. Wuthering Waves was formed by only a few Kuro communities coming from games like Punishing Grey Raven, while a massive portion of its player base most definitely came from disgruntled Genshin Impact players that just want—
You're not allowed to say that. Apparently that's not true. That's not true, actually. It's clear it is, all right, because there's a lot of jilted ex-lovers, so we know that's the case. Yeah,
wanted a better product.
And to be fair, there is like quite a vocal part of the PGR community. It's like, yeah, fuck Wua and fuck the players who play Wua as well.
These two very distinct communities
which is
that
interesting.
Really hate each other and think that Wuthering Waves is a divisive game. There is one that's even going to be more divisive.
See, that's the thing, isn't it? It's a shame, isn't it, that people think that Wuthering Waves is the divisive game. Like, because, again, as somebody who's got more critiques around the game, but wholeheartedly believes it's a great game, the game isn't itself, right? It's the community, much like Genshin as well, right, at the end of the day.
Be drawn all over the place, resulting in Arknights Endfield becoming the most divisive Gacha game to ever release so far. Just before we jump into the content, I've got something I want to talk to you about. Creating these
Shadow
videos
Legends.
over the past 2 years has been super fun, but it's also a lot of work. So help me make more content for you by checking out Raid Shadow Legends. I'm sure you all know about it at this point. It's a fun fantasy-themed turn-based RPG game, all about collecting characters and fighting powerful enemies. It's got all the RPG game essentials, tons of amazing gameplay, and incredibly fleshed out endgame content. So, if you're a fan of this stuff, you're going to love it. You'll also get rewards valued at more than $200 by downloading it using my link in the description and the pinned comment. It's free, you won't regret it, and I would really appreciate it. Now let's get on to the content. In this video, I want to talk about how and why Endfield will be so divisive. I will be using a concept I've just made up called line drawing. Every time we conclude a reason for a massive portion of the player base to complain, a line will be drawn. Then I want to talk about the implications of this divisiveness when it comes to community and game development. Finally, I also want to give you my thoughts about the game so far.
Oh, okay,
has almost concluded and it's about time.
Because I don't think I've heard. I know I've heard him say that he's actually looking forward to Endfield, but I haven't heard his actual views on Endfield.
I do a review. So Arknights Endfield is obviously a sequel to Arknights, and it's a sequel in
I wouldn't call it a sequel so much, right? It's an adjacent title, right? And that's a fair, right? I wouldn't say it's a sequel, right? It's a part of the universe. That's the way I see it, anyway.
Every way. It's the same universe, the same timeline, even some of the exact same characters. The only difference is we're hundreds of years into the future, and it's an action RPG instead of a real-time strategy tower defense game. One of the biggest reasons it's going to be divisive is that it takes after Arknights a lot. While a lot of people may, at first glance, see that this is an action RPG gacha game and think they're obviously capitalizing upon Genshin's success, but they couldn't be more wrong. While games like Wuthering Waves are incredibly similar to Genshin Impact to the point where it's probably impossible to claim that Kuro games didn't take insanely heavy inspiration, Enfield's case is completely different.
Mr. Bean.
Also, by the way, I'm not attacking Kuro games for this. Wuthering Waves is a completely superior—
Bro, look, people always say this, right? Oh, people like to make toxic misinformation points and then act like the Wuthering Waves space is just incredibly reactionary. If I do upload this is going to create that sort of attitude again. Why do you find it when everybody makes a video talking about Wuthering Waves where there might be some critical points they have to say, I'm not hating on Kuro or the game. I think that itself says a lot. like Moose isn't exactly your person that really gets into it like that as well, right? Do you know? Well, that's what I've seen from his videos anyway. So it's it feels like a lot of people have to say that about the game.
Product to Genshin Impact in every way. They did the open world action RPG formula 1,000 times better. Anyways, how is Endfield more similar to Arknights than its actual competitors? Well, first of all, if you're going to copy your competitors, you better do things better than them. This is why Wuthering Waves is such a massive success. It is doing so many things better than Genshin Impact, such as generosity, combat quality, and the gacha system. Meanwhile, things like Endfield's gacha system are only very debatably better than games like Genshin and WoWA. While I personally think it's a better system for many reasons that I have listed in this video right here, everything is still very debatable either way.
Nah, it's not. Nah. The only place there's some debate is pity carryover and how important that is to you. But as I say anyway, I think that's a debate that's kind of moot anyway, because it's a false safety net, if you will. Nah, it's not a debate. It just is, right?
This gacha system is not perfect. It lacks the 50-50 guarantee that many players are used to. The 126-star guarantee also doesn't carry over, which again, a lot of players don't really like. This is already one line drawn that separates WoWA and Genshin players from Endfield.
I mean, that's
the system is a lot more like Arknights' system, where the only guarantee to get the on-banner units that you want is going above 150 pulls. If you're in dedicated Arknights spaces, you'll find a lot of players really don't mind this at all. A lot of Arknights players will tell you that if you just spend mindfully instead of pulling willy-nilly, you'll get what you want, and I'm inclined to agree, and I do think that the Endfield situation will be the same. This game also doesn't give out rewards like Genshin and WoWA. For example, achievements are completely optional and don't give Oro Barrel, just like in Arknights. Umbral Monument, one of Enfield's endgame modes we already have in the beta, doesn't give much either. This is just like Arknights, where the endgame does not.
I wonder if they'll keep that the same, right? Because of this conversation around the lack of pool currency, or they'll just throw it into non-combat based events, such as things like the photo event. Just so that means then they'll have to have a lot of non-combat events, which could be problematic in itself, because that could then mean we get less of other events potentially, or time spent on those events. I think the best thing they can do is probably just dial it up from the base game off the bat, right? So the base game itself just gives you more when you're logging in, when you're playing the game, when you're doing your bits and pieces, and then maybe attach some currency somewhere to some combat events where it's easily clearable. And if you're not clearing it, then it's like, I don't know what to say. You know what I mean?
I really give gacha currency. And also, fun fact, like most endgame content in the Battle Cats, a lot of Genshin, WoWA, HSR, and
Bro's gotta get Battle Cats in there, man.
See this and think it's predatory because you end up with less rewards. But this is obviously a good thing, because when you're not incentivized to pull the newest units because you need the 800 or so Stellar Jade locked behind the MOC, the devs are no longer incentivized to do things like power creep and HP.
True. And it also incentivizes them to make that content better, because they can't hide behind the shiny, ooh, look at this. Do you want some cookies? Get some cookies. Ignore the event sucks. There's a fruit pulls, man. So it removes that desire to create power creep more so based on content, because you're not really getting pulls out of it, so people will happily skip it. And also, it puts an onus on the developer to actually make good content, because what am I going to play it for if it's shit? The only reason you play shit events in gacha games is because you're going to get pulls at the end of it, right?
Inflation, and there's also way less FOMO surrounding the endgame content. That's sort of another line drawn because of unfamiliarity, but this could also serve as a line erased for some players, where they'll want to try out something new instead of the exact same formula they've tried out before. So this will depend on the open-mindedness of each player. Do you remember when Honkai Star Rail first came out? All the Genshin could never stuff, which in hindsight was really stupid because it's the same company. Well, the communities did eventually realize this, and now you'll barely find any HSR or Genshin players hating on each other. Instead, they'll hate on Wuthering Waves, probably. For a while, Honkai Star Rail itself was very divisive in the way that it created a further split. Remember how Wuthering Waves and Genshin's community split and began hating each other? Well, when you throw Honkai Star Rail discussions into the mix, you create a much more hostile and tribalistic environment. However, this was shut down when HSR and Genshin players obviously realized that in the end, they are one and the same. As a result, instead of a three-way tribal war, it became a Kuro versus Hoyo thing, but now, Endfield will also be thrown into the mix, but not just that, because Arknights over the past year or so has already been getting a lot of traction on the internet, with the Arknights Glaze movement specifically, and with Endfield on top of that, Hypergryph as a whole is going to enter this discussion,
Glaze.
and that itself is a huge reason as to why I'm
Our
saying
boy
this
Renegade
game
was
is
in
going
there
to be
then.
so divisive. Apart from being so different, it is also going to become a third competitor for the biggest open-world gacha game in the space, and Hypergryph is going to become a competitor for the biggest gacha company in the space, and will put them in the spotlight, or the low light, if you will. This will draw further lines between communities, leading to even more tribalism and drama. What's more, this game is going to be different enough to where, depending on how successful it is, companies will look into copying it instead.
Of course, that's why we've got to accept that. And I hope that the community as well doesn't get too disparaged by that, right? Because it's going to get dragged into mudslinging, right? And again, I know people see me as this guy who wants to pit Enfield against Wuthering Waves. It's just not the case. I just talk about games sometimes, right? I will be making sure I do my best as a CC who enjoys Enfield, not to partake in that, right? You know, I will point out when I think Enfield is doing great stuff. And if I have to make comparisons, because sometimes you need to for a baseline, I'm going to try and keep it more based around Enfield as a game though, because end of the day, it won't need me to be getting involved in that, because this game is going to become a target when it launches. We know it is, right? We just know it is. So, you know, all I say is to the community, because I know it can be quite, down, you know, something that gets people a little bit downhearted when that sort of stuff happens. Just be ready for it. You know, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Of Genshin. These companies are also very aware of the criticisms that are thrown towards games like Genshin. For example, Ethereal Restart released with no 50-50 for characters. If that doesn't tell you they know players are starting to get fed up with it, I don't know what will. If they see praise and glaze getting thrown at Endfield, then they will copy this game instead. For better or for worse, depending on its success, this game is going to probably set a new standard.
I think it will set a quality standard in some regards, right? I don't think it matters about glaze and praise though. End of the day, revenue will be the ultimate factor. The reason why so many games attempt to replicate things from Genshin, it's revenue. It's not because it was seen as the best thing since sliced bread. It's because it made the bread, right? And I said this before when I was playing Wuthering Waves, when it was first up for Mobile Game of the Year, and people in the community were trying to say, if it wins, this will be a defining factor for future gacha games. I was like, it won't. It won't. Gacha companies won't go, oh, that won Game of the Year. All right, let's model our game around that game. They'll look at who's making the most money, then they'll model a game around that, right? Suits don't give a fuck what you think about the game. They give a fuck about how much money you spend on the game, right? And that's what creates businesses to replicate other models.
I'll take a moment and ask you why you think HSR, ZZZ, and Wuthering Waves, despite being so successful, haven't done that themselves. Well, the answer is quite obvious. While they are better games than Genshin in so many ways, they also didn't do things differently enough to where outsider companies looking to create new gacha games take notice and develop accordingly. A prospective gacha company
I mean, this kind of goes back to what we was just talking about in the FOB video, right? There hasn't been a game really since Genshin that did what Genshin did in terms of the impact, pardon the pun, on the space, right? Genshin Impact had a genre industry-changing impact on Gacha, right? There really hasn't been a game that's had that impact yet. People can say critically things like Wuthering Waves and Star Rail and Zenless and whatever the game you think is better has for you. But in terms of the global monetary impact, it just hasn't really been anything like it, has there really? What's the closest things to it? Lads, maybe. Or like Pokemon freaking, the Pokemon trading card game.
I wasn't going to look at Genshin and Wuwa and say, I need to copy Wuwa more than Genshin.
Is any AK streamer TR 15 faster than Pix?
Genshin makes more money, and 2, Wuthering Waves has so far won the same awards. However, Endfield does things differently enough to where games can either follow Genshin standards or Endfield's. But to be honest, while this is another line drawn that will differentiate between games from the last 6 years and games after, it is also pretty damn speculatory, mostly because we don't know how successful Endfield will be, and we don't know how gacha company CEOs actually think. Another point...
You also got to take into account overheads as well when it comes to business practices, right? There's a reason why there's some gacha games out there that can survive off making 10 times less than the Genshin or the Wuthering Waves of the world, right? Because it costs so much less to develop said game. That's why, like, you know, your overheads become drastically larger when you go into the scopes of your Wuthering Waves and your Genshins and your ZZZs and your Endfields, right? Because it's production costs are just so much higher, aren't they?
Is that Arknights players are also complaining about Endfield. Their biggest issue with this game is the way limited and standard units work.
Yeah.
In Arknights, most units come out in their own banner.
I mean, that is one of the biggest
units. Meanwhile,
critiques,
limited units only come out during events like anniversaries and Chinese New Year. Now, it's an oversimplification, but it's basically how this works. These limited units only rerun during the events they were released with. Arknights.
I'll be honest right now. Enfield won't be the cultural phenomenon that Genshin was. I don't know when that's ever going to happen again. I don't know. Because it obviously wasn't just down to COVID, but like it was like the perfect storm, right? Genshin happened at the perfect moment. It was the first of this new wave of bigger scale, bigger scope games that felt like real games rather than just gacha games. And it happened at just a black swan event, right? That may never happen again in our lifetime. So it's just, I don't know, man. It'll be a long time if it ever does, right? Or it'll have to be something exceptional to make it happen. And I'm not saying I think Enfield is exceptional, but I'm realistic. I think it's going to be very successful. It's not going to be Genshin successful though. It's just not. You know what I mean?
Players expected Endfield to operate the same. Meanwhile, it's planning on doing the rerun system how Genshin does it. So, while it's doing most business how Arknights does it, it is at least doing this rerun system like the newer age gacha games, meaning there is also divisiveness in the Arknights community itself about this game, which is of course another line drawn.
Yep.
So, concluding the section, Endfield does things differently enough to where if it is successful enough, it is going to influence the production of newer games and will influence its competition through things it does objectively better. And there are a lot of things it does objectively better that I will talk about right now.
Okay, let's get it,
The
guys.
most obvious things Endfield does better than other games is the gear and weapon acquisition systems. Gear is not RNG like other games and is instead infinitely farmable and craftable. All you have to do is set up your AIC, get enough stock builds, and you're good to start crafting gear. Weapon Gacha is also free, and while you currently can't guarantee every 6-star weapon through Gacha only, especially because it seems like limited weapons won't be purchasable, which is super f***ing ass, but it's still better and cheaper than every other.
I spoke about this the other day. Do you reckon that might be a thing that pops up now and again? That it does happen like that? There will, maybe, for special events. I don't know, maybe I'm coping hard, right? I don't know.
System. Although, don't get me wrong, the fact that the game soft punishes you for getting lucky by not leaving you with enough arsenal tickets to get your 6-star operator's weapon, on top of signature weapons being pretty damn good, is an...
But, it's like now, obviously, this is about pure luck, right? This all comes down to, as well, how impactful particular signature weapons are for certain characters. Now, if you can easily use a non-signature weapon with a character and it's fine, then you can skip a weapon banner, right? And then hope that on the characters where the signature weapon doesn't matter so much, now this is big cope and big assumptions, you don't go deep into pity to get the character, so you save your pulls for a character where you do need to maybe hopefully go deep into pity to then get lots of weapon pulls to get the weapon, and you're kind of in a situation there where by RNGesus, you can, you know, maybe get the best of both worlds. But yeah, there is going to be those moments where it's like, shit, I really need the signature weapon. You get the character early, and you would have preferred to go a bit deeper, right?
Issue. Although it can easily
Again, do you get every signature weapon in Genshin Impact? Exactly. That goes back to that soil video that we are just talking about, you know. You just, especially if you're free to play or as a small spender, you got to accept you ain't going to get everything in the game anyway, are you? You know? You're just not.
1. Adjusting the weapon gacha to reduce its requirements. 2. Creating modes that reward you with arsenal tickets. Or 3. Making limited weapons purchasable. Or
I think
all
we
three
will
at the
see
same
that.
time.
I think
now, there is an infinite
I potentially think we will see whether it's like events or monthly ways of acquisition. I think we will get some decent ways to get arsenal tickets throughout the game. So you'll be able to smartly acquire weapons as well via that sort of process as well. So if you do end up getting lucky to the point where it's worse, that you'll be able to still do your thing.
Farm loop you can sink your teeth into if you are addicted to the gear grind, which are the weapon essences. While this is technically an RNG gear system, it has half if not a third of the RNG steps the gear in other games has. You just have to get the 3 attributes of each essence that match the weapon you want to equip.
I said this, I think this will be the type of RNG grinding that I want mine to do, because I don't have to do it repeatedly for one character, right? I'm not having to worry about a main stat and then 5 substats and then do that 5 fucking times. It's just 1, 3, done, you know? And that potential of getting the 3 is going to be where the real grind kicks in. But, yeah. And I've spoke about, like, the crafting type thing and the potentials of failures and stuff like that. We'll have to see. PTSD comes from some MMOs, so, yeah.
And then you can upgrade them. There is no level up rolling and there are no ranges. It is the perfect RNG gear system that incentivizes daily play without completely sucking the life out of you. There is a set, obvious, and non-arbitrary finish line that you can aim for, unlike other games where you can always get like 2 more speed or 3 more crit.
Yeah, you know, yeah, agree. Star Rail and Woo for me, both particularly painful experiences.
Damage or whatever. That finish line is simply getting a weapon essence that matches your weapon's attribute and is leveled up to max. Now there's also gear artificing, which basically works the exact same way as weapon essences except for gear. Now honestly, I'm still not the biggest fan of the gear artificing system, only the crafting part, though it is still overall a much better system than most other games and won't lead to that much suffering in the end. Although I used to think I liked the AIC gear crafting more than every other game because it was infinitely farmable and craftable, because of the gear artificing system being heavily RNG, I have gone back to preferring games like Battlecats and Arknights that don't have RNG in the character building. Aside from these systems, I also absolutely love the rest of the game. The exploration combines with the AIC factory super well, and it by far creates the best exploration experience.
I saw this as well, not to keep going back to that, but Enfield's got ziplines, bro. It's just the fucking same as the bike, bro. Nah. After we've seen the bike working now, I don't want to hear a single soul utter that ziplines, even if they were all around the map anyway, and you didn't have to craft the network yourself. Let's say that wasn't the case, but it is, so we take a further step away from it. If it was just there, after that gameplay we saw earlier of the bike, right, the idea that some people were saying that zip lines are inherently going to be the same in terms of reducing the friction in exploration as the bike is just crazy for me to hear now after seeing the gameplay for the bike and seeing this. It's just not the same, is it?
Out of the big open world games for me. The visuals are super beautiful, the details are insane, and the performance is super smooth. Now, the story, while it isn't the most revolutionary, is still definitely a great experience. I do definitely enjoy it more than any of the other 1.0.
Because I know from what I've heard, you know, as you get to Wooling, things improve, right? I am quite confident and I'm hopeful that the story is something, like a lot of gacha games, will just get better after launch, right? Again, I expect many stumbling blocks for Endfield post-launch. I do, and I think we're not going to get that's naive. And I honestly, genuinely do think the story's, I think it'll just improve over time. I do.
1.1 stories of any other gacha game, but not necessarily because of the story being told, but how it is told. The characters' facial expressions, animations, dialogue interactions, and everything else is absolutely impeccable. And Yvonne's introduction is by far my favorite introduction of any gacha character ever. And finally, the combat is incredibly fun. I've never had this much fun actually playing an open world game like this, and I would even say I enjoy this combat more than Battlecats, and that is saying something huge. While you might look at the element system and think, oh, it's just like Genshin where you apply elements to interact with each other. That's completely incorrect because that's not how it works. Let me put it this way. Imagine you're playing a turn-based action RPG game. That is the best way to describe this because at all times, you are both strategizing like you would in a turn-based game based on how to use up the skill points you currently have, and dodging around and moving based on what the enemies are doing in real time.
Well, yeah, as well, especially considering afflictions are necessary for certain combos and stuff as well, right? So they don't just become the product of something and the main end point of that in regards to the damage infliction. They become a part of the journey of triggering other things, right?
Now this game is ready for the January 22nd release, and the only thing that will really mess up the release date is if they pull a Stella Sora or something, or if they don't have enough events going. While it is ready, it is also not perfect. I've said this before, it is fine for the January 22nd release, although I do believe that it would have been so much better for the game as a whole if that date was instead an actual open beta and not a Chinese game development proverb.
Okay, alright. So, I said for the first beta, when I played the combat, right, and the game itself, it felt like a game that was ready to come out. Evidently, some of the changes we've seen, it wasn't. I personally thought we were going to look at March, because I think that just gave them a few months just to cross the T's and dot their I's. I do think the game is ready for January, personally, because the things that I think people would maybe want changing in regards to story, they're just not happening, right? They're just not happening. I think some of the story weaknesses hopefully will be ironed out as we go forward. I think maybe the extra few months could have potentially allowed for some of the tutorial tweaks, which I think for the majority of players might be necessary, because not everybody's going to come in with such a shilly view as me, right? Because I am such a fan of Endfield fundamentally that I can see the weaknesses of the first few hours of the game, but I actively enjoy it that much that I can kind of gloss over it. You know what I mean? I can't help it. That's just it. But I'm cognizant of that other people are going to come in who are maybe not as enjoying as a fan of the game initially, and that could potentially be a bit of a filter for them. So I don't think we're going to see much change in that regard. So I think it's fair to say that maybe a bit of a longer window for launch could have been a potential positive for the game, because I do think that might hamper some people's enjoyment and you know, involvement in the game initially. But I'm still hyped that it's coming soon. You know, I'm still hyped.
Maybe the actual release date closer to the end of February and March.
I'm not saying that tutorials are, I think, well, I don't know. It's like, I think they are necessary. But at the same time, it's more for like, I guess, I don't even necessarily, it is somewhat right. But at the same time, with the game, if there's anything you've ever forgot, you don't really ever need to go, because you will forget stuff, because it's a fucking crafting game, right? Fucking every game that has like base building or factory stuff, you'll be like, shit, wait a minute, what do I need to build first before it goes into that thing to craft this thing? And what's the recipe again? But like, because it's got the little chain where you can see exactly what you need. You kind of just look at that and just build it right. The tutorials will never give you the most efficient way to build a factory. They just give you the basics, don't they? I literally saw people read the tutorial and 2 seconds later get stuck and said, I think that's fair. But I think it's also something that you can learn by just looking in some of the menus and stuff as well, with the build chains and stuff like that can solve that. But yeah, I've seen it myself as well. Tom Bro was a person who I've seen it. He was bitching about how handholdy the tutorials was. And then literally, right after saying that, fucked up straight afterwards. Like, wait a minute, fuck, oh shit, you know, I thought that was quite funny. And we'll all do that. At the end of the day, as gamers, we do that all the time, right? A game can literally fucking explain something down to a T, right? And we'll be off in our ADHD brain, get into the game, and be like, wait, what do I do? Right? You know, we've all done it, you know, and I'm sure I'll be doing it on the stream.
Either way, I couldn't be more excited for this game, and you bet your ass I'm going to glaze it unless they mess up. In that case, I will be as harsh as I can, because I don't want this game to end up like Honkai Star Rail.
You know what? I'm with him right there, right? I've been a fucking glazer over this game, right? People call me a shill. I'm happy to be called a shill, because I think the game's amazing, right? But you bet your bottom dollar, if Hypergryph fuck up right, I will be insanely critical of things. Like, I want people to prepare for that, right? I don't want you to think I'm hating, because just like when I first started playing Wuthering Waves, right, I was incredibly critical about a lot of things in Wuthering Waves because I wanted it to be better, because I enjoyed it so much, and I enjoy this game so much. When I think Hypergryph are fucking up, I'm going to be in the trenches firing shots because I want it to get better. And I think that's when you should be the most critical in your life, is with the things you enjoy, right? It don't matter how critical you am of something you don't really enjoy, because at the end of the day, it don't really fucking matter. Do you know what I mean? It's up to us as an entire community to think about the things that we don't like in the game and express them as best as possible, but express them in a realistic way that actually can enact change, right? Do you know what I mean? Because obviously, there's certain things that we can, well, I don't want 50-50s, I don't want gacha. And it's like, all right, bro. It's not going to happen in this particular game. You're going to have to play another game. Because we've all been there with certain things like that. But I mean, you know, things that we can actually put back to the company in a sensible, smart manner and be the part of the vehicle of change for the game as well, right? That's what I want to be when this game comes out. Because I enjoy it so much. And this isn't even coming from like a, you know, kumbaya, let's all dance around the fire kind of attitude. It's just because I just want the game to be better, because the fucking game's good and I want it to be better. So, you know, I think it's our duty, right? It's our duty to attempt to be critical of things. But as I say, be smart about it. But yeah, I can't wait, man. I can't wait, guys. I'm excited. I'm so excited. It's going to be a good time.